Hi, I'm Krista.
Hi, I'm Abby.
I actually didn't want to do the discipleship pathway. I thought that I was already way too busy and involved in a lot of different things. And then Abby is actually one of my Ransom Teens friend group, which is where we met as well. And there was one night that Abby came up and I asked her, I said, would you be interested in being discipled? And she just kind of shook her head and I was like, okay, I guess this is the time. And I know that it's right.
And God had been telling me that night, we'd actually been singing a song or been talking about something, and we were supposed to go up and pray with our leaders if we wanted to. God had been speaking to me, telling me to go up, and I didn't really know why. I was like wondering what this was about, but I went up and she asked me, because I've been wondering about discipleship for a long time, and now I know it was for a reason.
So we usually just start off just talking about what our days have been, obviously catching up on that. Sometimes it may be some weeks in between since our last discipleship meeting, so we'll just catch up and see where you've been. And then we'll kind of jump into the modules and kind of see where we're at. Because sometimes life happens and you just want to just talk things through, and maybe not. Maybe it's not always about the modules and going through that. Sometimes it's just you need time just to be with someone else.
We like to just talk about what's going on in our lives a lot, because we work on the modules, but at the same time we get to know each other. Like, I know Krista a lot more than I used to.
It's really interesting to spend time with just one person. When you're with just one-on-one, it's really forced me to dive in and know, like, this person's counting on me. Like, we're doing this together. It's just the two of us.
I feel like you're better able to go into depth and understand it better, because when it's one-on-one, you're better able to talk about your life and how it relates to you more than just like everyone. So you're better able to connect with God and just grow more in Him and be able to see God more, because I'm able to talk it through with people. It helps you to become closer and form a bond with another Christian, which is always good, because you know you have them to go to whenever you're going through rough times in life. It always talks about in the Bible how you go through a lot of discrimination or that type of stuff because of being a Christian. Just having someone to talk to and be there for you just helps.
If you're already questioning it, that means that you should probably do it. If you're already on the fence, that means that you're already on the fence. I don't think anyone's going to regret spending time with another Christian and spending time with the Word. The only thing I regret is not starting earlier, of being resentful of the whole thing. I don't want to do it. I'm already involved enough, and just how selfish that is. Like, you just need to go.
You feel better at the end of the day, just knowing.
Yeah.
I want to take a little bit, like 10-15 minutes, just to tackle some common fears or excuses that people often have for getting involved with discipleship. Maybe you guys have had these fears or excuses before, or maybe you've heard of this from other people. And I used J.D. Greer's book, again, Gaining by Losing, to kind of outline 5 common excuses or fears for getting involved with discipleship. And so I'm just going to kind of play off those a little bit, and I think this will be a good starting ground, as I think this might be where a lot of us are or have been in this journey. And the first one, and this is probably the biggest one that we hear, is that I don't have what it takes. I don't have what it takes. I know we as a staff, but me individually, have just been overwhelmed by how many people who felt like they're afraid to do discipleship, that they don't know enough, that they haven't grown enough, that maybe they need to be discipled first, or that they just don't know what to say, or all of those kind of things. And it just paralyzes them. It just paralyzes them to actually pursue this. And if that's you, I kind of want to make just a public apology to you as a national American church. This may not necessarily be the case for the Ransom, but America has become a very consumeristic culture, right? I think we all know this. And at some point in the church's history here in our country, we also adapted kind of this consumeristic Christianity culture, or sometimes it's called a non-discipleship Christianity culture, which means basically all you have to do is show up, and all you have to do is just, as long as you're kind of like pitching in on a service and you're attending worship, then that's going to be your main means to grow. But outside of that now, we're asking you guys to not just come and consume whatever we're giving you, but actually to take that and to give it to somebody else, for you to take ownership of someone else's spirituality, as opposed to just it coming from the professional pastors, right? Like what we talked about earlier. And so all of that goes against the grain of what's been wired into our heads as Christians in this country. You know, it's totally against our beings in this country. But if that's you, I want to remind you that we still have no excuse, right? Because Jesus very intentionally at the end of the Great Commission says, I will surely be with you always, even to the end of the age. And yeah, that might sound like a cop-out answer, like, oh, don't worry, Jesus is with you, just go do it anyway. Like, you know, that's not supposed to be just a cop-out answer. But legitimately, we are not the ones who are ultimately teaching people. God is the one who's teaching them through us. We are just simply looking back and inviting someone else into the journey alongside us. That's essentially what it is. So if you feel like you don't have what it takes, don't worry. All of us feel that way. But there's always someone a little bit behind you in their spiritual journey that you can lead in those things. So that's the first one. I don't have what it takes. Number 2, evangelism is just not my spiritual gift. Evangelism can actually really be understood as like the beginning of discipleship. It's inviting people into that relationship with Jesus. And it's often assumed that like the prophets and the teachers and the pastors are the ones to do that. And it's easy to say, I'm just not wired for that. I don't have that gifting to go out and do that. But I love what J.D. Greer says about this. He writes, it is true that God has given some believers the gift of the evangelist, or the gift to proclaim God's good news to the masses. But don't confuse a spiritual gift given to some with an assignment given to all. A spiritual gift is usually just a special empowerment, an unusual effectiveness, and an assignment given to all believers. So just because you might not be gifted in evangelism doesn't mean that you should just not do it. Like, I'm not gifted in cooking, so that doesn't mean I'm just going to stop eating, right? Like, that's ridiculous. Like, I will suffer through it, and I will make Pop-Tarts and cereal and oatmeal for days. If that's all I need, right? I can make a couple more things than that, but not a lot more. But that's the exact same kind of thing. Just because you're not good at something doesn't necessarily mean that you shouldn't do it. This is something that we have been commanded to do. And so that's something that we have to tackle. Number 3 is this phrase, I witness with my life. I witness with my life. How many of you have heard the phrase, preach the gospel, when necessary, use words? You guys heard that phrase before? That's a really sentimental phrase, but it's absolutely terrible for discipleship. Because you have to insert Jesus into the conversation of why you do what you do. If you don't include Jesus in the conversation when you're doing your good works or when you're reaching out into the community and when you're doing that, if Jesus isn't a part of your conversation, you're no different from a social activist. You know? We have to be able to proclaim his news because the word gospel means good news, right? But I think what we do, what we subconsciously do, we hear gospel and good news and we just focus on the good part. This is a really good message that I internalize myself and transform myself and forget that it's news. News, in its purest sense, means it's proclaimed. Like newspapers, news apps, and news TV stations would not exist if they just didn't report what is happening, what is going on. So we forget that this good news that we have has to be proclaimed. We have to witness with our words as much as just with our life, too. Number 4, and I think this might also be another huge one for us, it's I don't have time. I don't have time, and I so get this one. We are so busy. Just as a culture in general, we are so busy. We are working 40 hours a week plus more in addition to having a family, plus those extracurricular activities, and attending a service on a Sunday, and serving during a service on Sunday, and then maybe trying to catch a community group during the middle of the week. Like, how could we add talking to people about Jesus regularly into the mix? But I respond with, how can we not? How can we not? Like, we've heard from Danielle and Morgan and Krista and Abby themselves, like, how could we not do this thing? Because one quote from Bill Hull, I think, just summarizes this perfectly. And it's that discipleship isn't a program, it's a lifestyle. This is something, like, that should be embedded into our DNA, and we figure out how to do regardless of what happens. It's as essential to our life as eating and sleeping and drinking, right? And breathing. That's this whole essence of discipleship. And so, obviously, there are times when life gets crazy. Maybe you won't be able to like really meet like regularly. Like it's not always going to be like, we're going to be in a coffee shop every week and for an hour and a half. Like, obviously stuff happens. But you learn how it's not just that little meeting, but then you also learn how to invite them into your everyday. Maybe have them over every once in a while for a meal, or if you're moving, invite your disciple to come with you and help you move. Like it's like they learn just as much from being with you as a friend as they do from sitting down and studying Scripture. They pick up on all of these things of how the discipler lives. And so just simply by being alongside you and inviting them into the stuff that you're already doing with your time, it becomes a powerful way of actually influencing them in that way. Discipleship isn't a program. It's a lifestyle. We figure out how to make it happen. Number 5, talking about Jesus makes me feel weird. This is J.D. Greer's words, but I think it's legit. Like, it's awkward. It's messy. I think J.D. Greer actually describes evangelism as two awkward people talking about Jesus, essentially. Like, it can be so awkward at first, especially those who aren't as maybe people-oriented. Like Daniel and Morgan says, like, it's something where you're getting down to the nitty-gritty of people's lives, and you discover things that could be hard. But at the end of the day, though, when you can push through that awkwardness, and we can truly, like, soak that up and embrace it, it becomes something beautiful, and not just for the disciple to learn from that, but the discipler benefits from that as well, too. It's this beautiful mutual thing that actually, if you've kind of reached a point in your own faith where you're like, what's the next thing? Discipleship could be that next thing for you, because in pouring into someone else, it now forces you to practice what you preach, And now you get to hone into your own life, and you're like, oh my gosh, like, I need to be doing this. Me and my disciple Josh, we're in Module 8 right now, the Discipleship Pathway, if you guys are familiar with our tool. It's all about hospitality and this conversation of inviting people in to your life who don't know Jesus to talk about them is essentially what Module 8 is about. And I'm looking at that, and I'm like, oh, holy smokes. I love the dig deep part, but this reaching out part of discipleship is hard. And it's in that conversation I've been able to see myself how I need to grow. It's all so worth it. And I think when we can push through these common fears and excuses, and I think there's a lot more of them out there, when we can just push through that and we just do what our friend said and just do it, just get started, just push ourselves over the fence, I think we'll be blown away at how amazing it really, really is. And so you may be wondering at this point, how do we do this? What does this actually look like? And instead of talking or hearing me talk about it, I would rather you guys hear from people who are actually in the thick of it. And so I have invited 8 of my good friends here who are both discipling and being discipled, and I'm going to go ahead, you guys can go ahead and come up now and just take a spot anywhere. I get the comfy chair because we only had 8 of these chairs, and so that's just kind of how that turned out. But, so grab a seat. Awesome. Hi, friends. Your microphones might be turned off, so you might need to turn those on because that'd be super awkward if you do that thing where like, oh, it's not on. Cool. Then just give it all like a little check real quick. Check.
Good evening. No, it's morning, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
I'm a night person.
Sweet. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much again for being here and just for filling us all in on what discipleship can look like. What I would love to do is we'll start down here at the end with Caleb, and you'll say your name, and then like you'll introduce yourselves kind of as like disciple or disciple, and somebody kind of describe like how did your discipleship relationship start? So your name, and how did your relationship start? Start with you, Caleb.
Caleb Cook. Dushak. I want to say it started, so we were gatekeeping at downtown campus and started playing softball together, and when the discipleship pathway kind of got going, I kind of had the nudge of, oh, you should ask Joe. Like, it probably took me like 3 months to get there, because, you know, dudes, it's not like, hey, let's do discipleship. But as Phil would say, I got over myself and got there. So.
Yeah. Well, like we were gatekeepers, and then we played softball together one year, and then he just out of the blue texted me one night. So just like a good millennial, he just texted me, and that just started the conversation, and then our schedules work out to where we can meet in the mornings before work, and
I'm Chris Isles and
Derek Crockett.
and I'm the discipler. I guess we started out simply by invitation. For me, Jared asked me, "Hey, would you be interested in this?" And this was right at the beginning, very beginning of discipleship, and I just said, "Yep, absolutely." I mean, the call has been on my heart to mentor other men for the last 8 years, and I finally responded to it 8 months ago.
Yeah, mine came from just the whole interest of being more, doing more in my life, the spiritual growth. I got a hold of Jason. He told me about discipleship. I'd been already coming to the church for a while and wanted to do more, be more. And so he introduced me to, or gave me Chris's number, and called him. And I mean, right then, just started from there. So just the whole idea of wanting to do more just got me interested.
So good.
I'm Lacey, and Sarah disciples me. I did start discipling a girl, but her life got tricky. And then I was interested in Sarah to help me out with advice for my child. And then we met up, and she's like, "Would you like to be discipled?" And I'm like, yes. So.
That's it in a nutshell. I'm Sarah Fravel, and I have, thanks. I have a few other people that I disciple, so we'll hear some more about that, I'm sure.
Noah, I'm a disciple. I got connected with Colin through Jake. After I got baptized in November, I knew that one of the biggest things I needed to do was just release and no longer like feel out of the shame of my past, and just like be able to be vulnerable and like share what Jesus was doing in my life, and like learn how to actually disciple people through that. And so we got connected, and have been going through the modules for the last like couple months now. So it's good.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and I'm Colin Steen, and through Jake, it's been just such a blessing to be able to get to know someone more intimately, like they were even saying on the videos, that just being able the opportunity to dive in and get to know each other even more and more has been such a blessing. So
That's good. Thanks, guys. And then feel free to speak up. No pressure here for any of these questions that you feel like, but for you to share. We'll just go ahead and get nice and personal here. Like, what fears did you have about discipleship that you're willing to share? What fears did you have about discipleship, and how have those been overcome now that you've started?
So the biggest fear for me, like even like getting baptized and stuff, is just like this reality that I thought I had to be better, and that I wasn't good enough, and that like I definitely didn't believe that like God was big enough to change me, and I was way too sinful. And so through that experience, I like recognized that I was going to have to like open up and be transparent. And so I think the biggest fear for me was like knowing that I was going to enter in this relationship, and I was going to have to like release everything that was on my heart, and like be super vulnerable and super transparent, which is not something that like is easy for me. Probably not for many people, but I think that I just got met with like such an overwhelming amount of love, and this just like recognition that like Jesus isn't like surprised by our sin, but he just like completely loves us. That's why he went to the cross. So
Good. Derek, you were gonna say?
I think the same thing too, fear of opening up to other people. I've lived a pretty private life, I would say, and so by letting out all my doubts, all my fears and stuff like that to somebody else, pouring it out to them, and being able to realize who I am in that sense. So I think that is a big fear that I had, and I'm usually an outgoing person, but telling my personal life, how I became, a child of God, how I'm now walking and feeling better about myself. And so just getting that relationship out to somebody has been accomplished, I would say now. But that was a fear at first. So
I would say I didn't have any fears about being discipled. For a while, since I came up here for college, I've been wanting a solid Christian man to kind of follow, like similar to discipleship. And when Caleb texted me, it was kind of just like an answered prayer. And there is that scare of being vulnerable and opening up, but there's that comfort knowing you're opening up to someone who's so grounded in Christ that they're able to kind of clear the waters and kind of steer in the right direction as well.
Yeah, I'd say the flip side of that. So those who know me, I'm a perfectionist on a lot of things, and so just kind of the thought of, man, I'd be accountable for discipling someone. I should have everything all together and perfect and make sure I'm ready to do that. And just kind of it's always easy to find inadequacies or faults or failures that you're working through. You're human. And, just the realization that, we're not going to reach perfection here on earth. That's in heaven. And, it is nice to be able to be honest about, hey, I still have my own faults and things I work through. And this is kind of freeing at that point, because then you're able to open up and kind of the fear of that goes away.
That's good.
My thoughts were kind of like Caleb's, and what really helped me was something Jake mentioned just a little bit ago, and something that Pastor Tagg had mentioned when he was first talking about discipleship, and it was that we're not setting up this relationship for the disciple to look to the discipler to be the ultimate. It's the discipler that's saying, hey, look, this is where you need to be pointed. This is where I'm pointed. It's not about being that perfection for the disciple.
Yeah, it's good. It's super good. Why don't you guys let us in a little bit on what does a typical discipleship meeting for you look like? Do you use the discipleship pathway, which is that tool that we've kind of used, or how do you deviate from that? What all do you guys cover? Kind of walk us through, what does the meeting look like?
So for Noah and I, it's been really nice. We really do usually take the first however long. It could be 5 minutes, it could be our first 15 minutes, and just catching up. We try to meet every other week. That's usually been pretty consistent for us, time-wise, just in both of our lives. But so we usually try to catch up on each other's lives a little bit, knowing areas that we can both be praying for each other, and then we do dive into the module, the guideline for the module. And if that's a fear for anybody, it wasn't one of my fears, but if that's a fear for anybody, it was gosh, I don't know how to do this. I mean, the module just lays everything out so well for you. If you like that kind of stringent of checklist, here's a question that we can discuss on. So that usually takes up our time, and then we have some special time at the end to pray a little bit for each other and guide for the next time that we get together.
Lacey and I meet every Sunday, and we only meet for an hour. So we meet at the beginning service, 8:30 we meet. So because we meet every week, we are able to do it in an hour. So if you're worried about the time that it takes, it can be done in an hour. That discipline of meeting every week is helpful. That helps us stick to an hour, and then we know that it's time for church for the second service, so we can go to church then after that. So if you're looking for a time to meet, what are you doing on Sunday morning? Kind of think you could probably do it when you're not at a service, because then you could go to service together, or do your church time then. Lacey, you want to tell them what we do?
Yeah, so we we get together and we kind of talk about things during the week, or we touch base on maybe like something that I was struggling with during the week, and then we start with a prayer, and then we just dig in right away. At first, when she was like, let's meet at 8:30 on Sunday, I'm like, oh, like 3 hours at church, because then I serve too. But now it's like you just look forward to it. I mean, we can all say that we need therapy, you know. It's just good to go and just. I mean, I've always been excited about discipleship, so like it's easy for me to open up and just feel freedom, and so it's been great. It's a growing and maturing me in a lot of ways, and like I don't know. I encourage all of you to do it. It's great.
The structure for us has been really nice that it's open and so flexible, right? We've been following the discipleship modules, and so we agree that's a great set pathway that you can walk through, and it brings structure to the conversation, but you can certainly deviate from it. I mean, generally we spend the first part of our time just talking about life, what's going on in each other's lives, and so that's really great to have that connection. It goes further than just we're both here to study this thing. It actually lets us connect on a more personal level to start off with, and then we move into the module. And the timing for us has been really nice that for both of us, we have things going on. Our jobs take us into different periods of time on different days. So if we can't meet one week, we just say, hey, can't meet. We meet the next week, but we try to do it every week. So it's been good to have that flexibility. And honestly, both of our wives will tell you that we try to stick to half an hour, but it ends up generally going a little bit longer. So you can set your schedule. You can make it wide open to just be however long you want it to be. It doesn't seem like there's one specific way that it has to work. So
that's good.
I mean, yeah, like you said, we open up in the beginning. Everything is great, talking about our lives. Go from there, because open up in what's going on in each other's lives sort of helps relax you into going into the modules. The modules are set perfectly. It's a great guideline to start off with. They're pretty easy. Like it says, we do go 30 minutes, sometimes longer. Just depends on what it is. And because of that relationship in the beginning, it sort of brings that out, because there's other things to discuss within that module besides just what's in the module. So it works out perfect for us, and the timing is perfect. It becomes, like you said in the beginning, a lifestyle. So it's become embedded in me to meet. And if there's circumstances in your lives, sick or kids or just whatever it is to stop you from going that week, then it's very flexible. It's very flexible to just say, okay, next week will work, or even a different day in that week. But we do try to do it regularly, every week. So
good. Awesome. Question for the disciples, because I'd love to hear this question from you guys. Because I'm sure all of us are wondering, like, what does a good discipler look like? What are those characteristics? What do they do? So this is a chance for you guys to brag on your disciplers a little bit, or just in your mind, what are some characteristics that make a good discipler? Put you on the spot.
I would say just the structure of how their lives are. I would say the characteristics of your disciple, how they go about life, how things are working for them, and how the Lord is working in their lives also, sort of makes a good character or an example, I would say, for the student. And that's what I've been going by. I mean, we're not all perfect. We have flaws in our lives, and things happen. But to have somebody that's structured a little bit more than what you are, sort of builds who you are, or how they're built themselves, is a way, an example of how you should work yourself too and build yourself up.
I think that some of the attributes that are like most, for me, like Colin's just been really transparent about everything that's going on in his own life, and that allows me to be really transparent about what's going on in my own life too. Allows us to pray about that, and I think that that's been such a huge portion of our discipleship pathway, apart from the actual modules. So I think that just being able to be transparent, and I think also just being bought in. I think that since he's really diligent, he's really accountable in the way he does stuff in the pathway, that allows me to be really bought into. And so yeah, just setting an example for what a good disciple of Christ looks like. I think that just being really open with your own life outside of study, but then also being really bought into the modules that you're taking part in. So.
For me, like, I think it's cool. Sarah's going to school, and that's something that I've been called to do as well, to do more ministry. So sharing that together, and I think it's cool, like during the week, you know, if there's some type of conference or event, she'll message me and say, hey, look into this. And so just having that growth in herself. And then even today, like, she sent me a message, woohoo, it's here, like, because I was so excited. So just having that encouragement, not just when you meet, but throughout the week. And I send her daily devotionals as well. And so it's just cool to have that bond.
That's awesome.
I think it's just being vulnerable as well as, you hear all the time, a disciplee is supposed to be vulnerable and open up. But discipler, when they're really vulnerable and you see where they're struggling in life, really helps you open up as well. Also, just being real, not putting on a mask and kind of trying to fake it like you do have it all together. Caleb is pretty structured, and I do see that perfectionist side of him. But that makes me want to kind of be more like him as well, because he does have his, from my point of view, his life on the right path and everything together. So, but just being real. Because if he wasn't, and you could kind of tell as well, just that being authentic, would be kind of tough the disciple would be able to see that.
Sure. Yeah. That's awesome. Now, disciplers, I'm curious, how have you guys grown through discipling your disciple? Have you grown as a part of this?
This is, I feel like in anybody's journey, this is just another part of your journey in our growth in Christ, because we're never complete. We're striving each and every day to be more and more like Christ. So, I know for me, it's you talk about accountability. That's a lot what it is. It's I look forward to that, because this is my opportunity that, like, okay, I'm going to prepare for this, for Noah and I's time together. And a lot of times, what I love about it is that when I'm preparing and what I think maybe we're going to talk about, but then, as we're guiding and allowing, the conversation go where it's supposed to go, we end up going in a different direction that I thought it would go into. But for me, as just in my journey of life, this is just kind of another one of those steps, and it's just, not that I'm ever looking forward to the day Noah and I are done discipling each other, but I am looking forward to who the next person that I get to be a part of too, because that's what this is all about. And for me, what it's even more fun is I'm seeing traits and things in Noah that I know he could disciple somebody, and that's what I really look forward to seeing the opportunity that he's going to get next. So.
This is such an amazing question, because I got to start doing the discipleship pathway when it was still in progress. There were only 3 modules written. And I'm like, sure, I'll help you do that, whatever. I had no clue about anything. And as the pathway was being written, I knew God was asking me to do more. I just didn't know what that was. Before the pathway was finished being written, I started to be a part of the church planting cohort. And so that's an amazing journey in and of itself. And watching Jake put those dividing lines on the board this morning was really fun, because part of those words are part of the words that I think God has given me for the church that someday will be planted, that I will be a part of. So seeing all of that is super cool. And then just the realization of all of the ways that God plants those things in your heart that he calls you to is all a part of being his disciple. And what does that look like as you follow him, as you are obedient to him? And it starts with saying, yes, I am your disciple. Yes, I will do what you ask me to do. And that's all of this kind of thing. When Noah said yes, I was there that day you were baptized. I don't know if you remember that. I was behind the scenes when you were there. I remember that. I know it was. That was one of the coolest days ever. I totally remember that. It was so cool. But that's when it starts, when you say yes. Whatever you have for me, Lord, I will do that. And all of those reasons that we gave for why we don't want to disciple, like, yeah, those are all real. Yeah, I don't ever want to say yes to any of that stuff, but that's the biggest journey in life. And when you say yes to God, there's so much more. And you say yes because you know that when you say yes, it's a huge adventure, and there's nothing better than that. And you get to do life alongside of people like Lacey, who challenge you to think bigger, because you can't think that stuff up on your own. You just can't, right? When you do life together with someone else, when you look forward to that time together, that you are walking together. I don't think of myself as the discipler and Lacey's the disciplee or whatever. That's not what it is. We do life together. We learn together what the Lord has for us together. And that's so exciting. And to think that there's more of that out there is beyond my imagination. I cannot even believe it sometimes. And how that grows me and how that stretches me is it challenges me in my prayer life to really come to the Lord and say, I cannot do this by myself. I don't know anything, but you do. And you will give it to me, and you will stretch me, and you will grow me. And the discipline that we have together, the Lord and I, is growing more and more each day. And to get to share that and walk with Lacey through that together, she challenges me, I challenge her. It's so great. It's beautiful. And I would not ever want to miss that. That's what I get. And I just can't wait for more. So that's what I get. That's how I grow.
Where are the introverts in the room? Yeah. So, for those of us introverts, I think it's really easy as we go through life and learn things and experiences and learn through those, the highs and the lows and the hardships and all that. I think it's easy just to keep that internal, and that's not really what we're called to do. We're not called to keep the things we learn to ourselves. We're called to teach others and come alongside others. And I think that's probably the biggest thing for me is I'm an introvert. I like to, I learn things, grow through things, but I keep it close to home, and that's where I've been challenged to share those things and look back on those things. There's the phrase you learn by teaching, or you grow by teaching, and being able to share the things I've learned throughout life and share those things that it makes you come back and reflect on them and find other things to learn from them.
That's good. That's good. Last question, just to toss out. This is a free for all. How has your discipleship journey? Obviously, you guys are digging deep with each other a lot, but how has it inspired you to reach out and potentially make more disciples? What has that journey looked like for you?
I think for me, it was simply the realization that this is a completely different aspect to my walk. The ability to pour into somebody else is something that you don't experience unless you engage in this kind of thing in discipleship. And so, just that new dimension, that new aspect to your walk with Christ is, I think, just a huge part of what's going to continue to encourage me to disciple. Like you said, it's looking forward to the next one too, and the next one, and the next one, and getting really excited about how it's multiplying, because I know Derek's going to be getting a disciple as well. You can tell that because it's the kind of program that allows you to be engaged and gives you a pathway to move that forward. It's not just this learning for now, but Derek's seeing how he's going to turn around and move that on to the next person.
I think I know for me, a lot of times, again, we're all up here, and you guys are looking up here at me, and so you a lot of times we think, oh, boy, they must have it all together. He's discipling something, but I'm a mess. I mean, and we all are. We're all a mess. Like I've got, and so Noah's been able to see that in me. I'm not just showing up like yeah, I've got a amazing wife and 3 kids, and it looks great, but man, life is tough, and we get left-sided all the time, and so just to be able to, I can talk with my wife a lot, and I love that we have, but to have another man that I can here's my struggles going on, Noah, right now, and so for me, that's just more like even moving forward of I have a passion, like Chris had said, I'm more to be able to sit down more and more with men, because us men, we have a lot of struggles, and one of my struggles for years was I used to live this party lifestyle, but when Jesus got a hold of me, my life has changed, and that's not who I am anymore. And I know there's a lot of men that think the world tells them to go the way a man is supposed to be, but Christ has another way that us men are supposed to live. And we can hear and preach and everything, but to have a one-on-one where we can get vulnerable and open up with each other, man, the impact that makes. And so for me, that's my passion of just being able to now that I get to do it with Noah now, but moving forward, I get to hope that God's going to place more, hopefully, men in my life, or in more men towards me as well. So,
time for one more.
Okay, this is the thing. Do you see how that gives you courage? When you practice that with each other, right? We talk about spiritual discipline, discipleship, it's a discipline. That means you have to practice. And wouldn't you rather practice going out? What is the word again?
Reaching out.
Reaching out. Wouldn't you rather practice reaching out with one person before you reach out with a lot of people? Because you know that's what God's calling you to do, right? So practice reaching out with that one person, because that's what you get, right, Colin? You get courage. You find out that your story shared with another person, you get the courage to share it. Oh, hey, you know what? He's got some of that same kind of story too. And as you share that together, you get courage to share it with the next person, with the next person, with the next person. And there's your movement. There's your multiplication. Now we got the disciples. Now we're going. Now something's happening. Courage, people. Courage. That's what we need.
Yeah, so good. So good. Guys, can we please give them a round of applause just for being those examples for us? So thank you guys so much. You guys can just leave your mics there. Again, what more is there that we could say? I think just hearing the personal stories of people makes us that much more real. Because even from my own life, I wouldn't be who I am today. I wouldn't even be a pastor had it not been for those who poured into my own life. And I'll even say for those parents in the room, the most crucial voice, discipleship voice in my life was my mom and my dad. And I just want to say, there is no more important disciple for you to make than for your own kiddos. We can get really programatized with, because almost saying, you had to go through the Ransom's discipleship pathway and, sign up all these things and you work through that way. But, as we learned, it's a flexible thing. It's a breathable thing. And even with your kids, that is, one of the most crucial things you could do. That they gave me the courage to speak up. And then out of that, when I received my call to ministry, my youth pastor was that voice for me all throughout the rest of high school. And then through college, having all those voices as well. Even as a Ransom's church staff, as pastors, we undergo discipleship all the time. Not only am I discipling, those own people, but I have bi-weekly meetings with Pastor Steph, to just keep me in track and just to hear how things are going with my own life. And same thing, Paul invests into his staff, and then Paul is invested by Pastor Cody and Pastor Phil Tagg. It is just this chain movement that is everywhere, because we truly cannot do this thing unless we actually come alongside each other in a very real way. It is truly the most beautiful thing that you might be able to experience. And you can do it with your families. You can do it with your kids. You can do it with your peers and your coworkers. Everything from reaching out to that initial conversation about Jesus all the way through to those deep, nitty-gritty things, And I don't know if you know this either, but even in one of those testimony videos with Danielle and Morgan, Danielle has been called to go on a church plant to Boise, Idaho with Gathering 208. Mind-boggling stuff. She is now more fueled to reach people and to go places because this is a part of her life. something as simple as a weekly meeting. That's why God has called us to it. So now the challenge, right? The challenge, right? Because obviously you are all here because you're either doing it or you're on the fence about it. If you're on the fence about it, this is kind of our opportunity to really give you this chance to embrace this. So you all should have received one of those cards coming in with just kind of your basic contact information, which campus you attend. This is so that way we can follow up with you after this. But we want every single person to fill out this card in one of the options below, because this kind of keeps us in track of like where you're at. Maybe some of you are already discipling one another, and so if you are, go ahead and write that name of somebody down just for us to make sure that we have you guys tracking with our 175, because it's possible that people are discipling other people and we just don't know about it. We'd love to know that so we can keep track with our goals. Or maybe there's some of you there in that second box. Today you're going to make the decision to commit to discipling somebody. Maybe you know the name of that person. Maybe it's a kid or someone. You could write that name down. But what we're actually going to do here at the end of this time, once when I'm done, we're going to give you guys the freedom just to mingle around, maybe with some of the new friends that you made with your time here, and actually see if you can get paired up into a disciple-making relationship right here. It's going to be a little chaotic. It's going to be a little awkward. But we are literally giving you a whole room for you to go and make disciples, and that can happen right here. Jared's coming around. If you guys didn't get a card, raise your hand. He'll give you one. And so this is a prime time to find that. Have those conversations and see. Or if you don't know who to reach out to, we're going to have staff members with the orange name tags, or myself. We're going to be throughout the warehouse here or in the lobby just to have these conversations with you, see if we can play matchmaker a little bit, and would love to get you guys in one of these disciple-making relationships if you are not in one yet. Or if you just still have questions and you want to connect about this, there's an option for that too, and we'll be sure to follow up with you guys this week to see if we can, whatever that next thing is, to help push you over the ledge, to empower you guys to do this. So that is our discipleship training, everybody. Now it's time for you guys to go do this. Okay? Okay?